Dawn is the hour when vows feel heavy, when even brave men keep their voices low, as if the sky might overhear. And today, in Upaplavya, one chariot is being readied for a journey that everyone politely calls hope. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in the Pandava camp at Upaplavya. Not a palace, not quite a city. A living sprawl of tents, pavilions, ropes, and cooking fires. The air is cool for a moment, cool enough to make you believe mercy still exists, until the day's heat begins creeping in from the east. Smoke from cook fires curls upward in thin, lazy threads. It smells like ghee and grain, like damp wood that refused to light the first time. Like cardamom someone was generous with, and onions someone definitely was not. Somewhere nearby, a pot is being scraped, and a dog is already negotiating with a sleepy guard for the leftovers. You step carefully, because the ground is a mess of footprints, dust, trampled grass, a few scattered flower petals from last night's rituals. The camp has the restless feel of a household that never truly unpacked. 13 years of being moved around will do that to you. And yes, you feel it. That long exile sits in the morning air like an extra layer of cloth. Heavy, warm, unwanted. The men waking here have slept on mats and rolled blankets, on hides and straw, on whatever was available. No cushions stuffed with swan feathers for most of them. If you were hoping for luxury, congratulations. You chose the wrong side of righteousness. A conch shell sounds somewhere in the distance. Not the fierce battlefield call. Not yet. This one is softer, like a reminder, like a breath drawn in before speech. As you walk deeper into the camp, you start noticing how people look at each other. Too long, too carefully, like every glance is carrying a question that no one wants to place into words. Will it happen? Will it finally break open? War is a word nobody wants to say before breakfast. And yet, it's everywhere, in the way weapons are stacked too neatly beside a sleeping place, in the way horses are already being brushed while the stars are still fading, in the way the cooks keep working, as if feeding an army is the only prayer they know. Ahead, you hear the creak of wood, wheels, a chariot being checked and tightened, leather straps drawn through buckles, the soft tap of a hand testing the curve of a yoke. The sound is ordinary. That's what makes it unsettling. Ordinary sounds on an extraordinary morning. You catch the scent of fresh jasmine. Someone's offered garlands already. It mixes with the sharp smell of metal oiled against rust and the faint sweetness of incense that clings to cloth. The wind brings it all in waves. Then you see him, Krishna, not seated on a throne, not surrounded by the kind of distance kings love to wear. He's simply there, near the chariot, as if he's about to take a short ride to a neighboring grove. The first thing you notice is how unhurried he is. The camp moves like a disturbed beehive, and he moves like a river, steady, certain, almost playful, even now. You half expect him to glance at the sky and comment on the weather, as if the weather is the biggest concern. His charioteer duties today are not for battle. Today, he rides as envoy, a messenger, a man carrying words into the mouth of Hastinapura, where words have a habit of being swallowed. then turned into something else. Nearby, the Pandavas are awake. You don't need an announcement to know where they are. Their presence changes the air. There's the tall calm of Yudhishthira, like a lamp that refuses to flicker even in wind. There's Bhima, a storm kept inside a human frame, trying, truly trying, not to become thunder. There's Arjuna, quiet, watchful, like an arrow already fitted to a longbow that isn't raised yet. Nakula and Sahadeva move in and out like shadows that learned discipline early. And Draupadi, she's there too, not at the center, not demanding attention, but you feel her like you feel heat from a fire even when your back is turned. A silence has weight. It sits on the morning like a second sun. Someone brings a tray of offerings, grains, flowers, a small lamp. The flame trembles, then steadies. A priest murmurs blessings, and the smoke slides upward, thin as a promise. This camp has allies too, men from Panchala, warriors from the Vrishnis, friends who came because the cause is just, and because nobody wants to be on the wrong side when the world cracks open. You hear a laugh from one of the younger soldiers, a little too loud. It's the kind of laugh that tries to pretend it slept well. It didn't. None of them did. You can tell by the way they rub their eyes, by the way they blink at the dawn like it's an accusation. A cook complains that princes eat like they've never seen food before. He says it with affection, but also with the tired pride of someone who knows he's feeding history. His ladle hits the pot with a dull clang, and he shakes his head, muttering about how even destiny should learn to arrive after breakfast. Your feet stop near the chariot. The wood is polished, but travel-worn. The fittings are solid. Someone has tied red cloth near the pole, and it flutters faintly. The horses stamp, impatient, tails swishing. They smell of sweat and warm hide, and the grassy sweetness of yesterday's fodder. Krishna's hand rests briefly on the chariot rail, just a touch, like greeting an old friend. This is the hinge of it, the last door before the flood. Because what is being asked isn't complicated. It's almost small enough to fit in the palm of your hand. After everything, the deceit in the hall, the long exile, the year of hiding, after every swallowed insult and every polite smile forced through clenched teeth, they are asking for peace, not even for the whole kingdom back, just enough land to stand on without borrowing breath from their enemies. 5 villages for 5 brothers, a request so modest it makes the throat sting. And still, everyone in this camp knows what waits in Hastinapura, a court heavy with pride, elders caught between love and duty, a blind king who hears truth like distant thunder and hopes the storm will pass around him, and Duryodhana shining with certainty, holding what he seized with a grip that doesn't loosen. You watch Bhima's hands. He flexes his fingers once, like he's testing whether patience is still possible. It's almost funny, in a dangerous way, the great wolf of a man practicing calm as if calm is a weapon he's not used to lifting. Arjuna stands near Krishna, quiet. You can sense how much he wants to go instead, longbow in hand, and settle everything the old way. But he doesn't. He stays. He trusts the path that uses words first. Yudhishthira looks at Krishna with the exhausted hope of someone who has tried to do everything correctly and is still paying for other people's crookedness. Someone offers Krishna a final set of blessings, a smear of sandal paste, a garland that leaves its perfume on the air even after the hands let go. The scent follows him like a soft hymn. The camp begins to gather at a respectful distance, not crowding, just witnessing, because it feels like watching a lamp being carried into a windy place. You want it to stay lit. You want it to return, with its flame still dancing. Krishna steps up into the chariot. The wood gives a small creak under his weight. The horses toss their heads, and their bridles chime with tiny bells. The morning seems to hold its breath, and for one suspended heartbeat, you can almost imagine it going differently, that a few sane words will land where they should, that pride will soften, that the earth will be spared the heavy tread of armies. Then the reins tighten, the wheels roll forward, carving two pale lines through the dust, and you stand there in Upaplavya, wrapped in incense and cook smoke and quiet dread, watching the envoy depart toward a city that has forgotten how to yield. But before that chariot ever moved, there was a question that had to be answered in the tent that night. It's late in Upaplavya, the kind of late where the camp feels smaller, as if darkness has pulled the edges inward. Cook fires have burned down to sleepy coals. Somewhere, a horse stamps and snorts, irritated at a mosquito with royal ambition. You step toward the Pandavas' pavilion, and the smell meets you first. Ghee lamps, warm wool, dust that still holds the day's heat. The air tastes faintly of smoke and cardamom from someone's forgotten tea. Inside, it's quiet in the way a longbow is quiet before it sings. A few lamps float in the corners like fireflies caught in clay bowls. Their light slides over armor stacked neatly, over rolled blankets, over the low table where maps and tokens lie as if they might suddenly explain how to save the world. Krishna sits easy, cross-legged, as if this is any other night, as if tomorrow isn't a knife edge. And the brothers, those 5 pillars holding up a life that keeps trying to collapse, sit around him with the stiffness of men who have slept on forest ground too long and still haven't forgiven fate for it. You can feel it in your own shoulders, even just standing there. 13 years of swallowing insult like it's medicine. Yudhishthira's face looks carved from patience, not the proud kind, the exhausted kind. His hands rest on his knees, fingers still, but his eyes keep moving, lamp to lamp, brother to brother, counting consequences the way other men count coins. Across from him, Bhima is a contained storm. He's trying to sit like a prince. He really is, but everything about him is built for breaking things. His jaw keeps tightening as if it wants to chew through the past. Every so often his fingers flex, and the leather strap at his wrist creaks softly, protesting. Arjuna is there too, quiet and watchful, gaze lowered like he's studying the grain of the floorboards. But you can tell his mind is elsewhere, measuring distance, imagining chariot wheels, hearing the invisible whir of arrows that haven't flown yet. Nakula and Sahadeva sit close, calmer on the surface, but even their calm feels sharpened. The twins have that look men get when they're polite, only because someone older told them to be. And then there's Draupadi. She sits slightly back from the circle, draped in cloth that catches the lamplight like dark water. Her jewelry is minimal tonight. No need for noise. Her hair is braided and controlled. But you remember, everyone remembers. Another day, another hall, when control was something done to her, not by her. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Her silence is a whole verdict sitting upright. You're standing there with the weight of that silence pressing against your ribs, and you realize the question isn't whether Krishna can talk. The question is what they dare to ask him to say. Because asking is its own humiliation. Yudhishthira begins softly at first, like he's afraid of waking the wrong spirit in the room. He has been turning the thought over for days, like a prayer bead rubbed smooth. Demand the kingdom back. Demand what was stolen. Demand the full return of what was theirs by right. Bhima can barely let him finish the shape of it. Even without words spilling out, you see Bhima's whole body argue back. His shoulders rise, his nostrils flare. The lamp nearest him flickers as if it feels the heat coming off his anger. He wants the old answer. The answer that fits in the hand. Not petitions, not messengers, not speeches offered to men who call cruelty policy. He wants to march. He wants to stand in Hastinapura's gates and make the stones remember who they belong to. And there's a bitter, almost funny edge to it. Because everyone in the tent knows Bhima could probably carry the gate away if he got frustrated enough. Hinges and all. The palace guards would be left holding their spears and wondering what exactly they're meant to defend now. But no one laughs. Not tonight. The air is too thick for laughter to travel. Krishna listens without hurry, head tilted slightly, eyes bright in the lamplight. He doesn't look like a man preparing for a confrontation with a kingdom. He looks like someone listening to a family argue over dinner, except that dinner is the fate of dynasties. Yudhishthira's voice grows steadier. He speaks of rules, of oaths kept, of exile endured down to the last day, of how even the forest seemed to count the years with them, monsoon after monsoon, dry season after dry season. He speaks of peace, not as weakness, as an offering, a final offering placed carefully in front of people who have already kicked so many offerings into the dirt. Bhima's restraint cracks enough to show teeth. He reminds the tent, without needing much detail, of the dice that clacked on the floor like little stones of doom, of how a game became a net, of how elders watched, and the watching itself became a wound. He doesn't have to say Draupadi's name. She is right there, silent, and the memory of that hall is right there too, crowded into the tent with all of you. You can almost smell it. Polished wood, sweat trapped under silk, the faint sharpness of fear that no incense can cover. You can feel the grit of helplessness on your tongue. Yudhishthira hears Bhima. You can see it hit him, not like an insult, like truth. And still, he turns toward Krishna with something almost pleading in his eyes. He doesn't want to demand the full kingdom if it means war is certain. He doesn't want the earth to be trampled because his pride needed the bigger number. That's the strange thing about Yudhishthira. Even after everything, he still tries to believe that if he is careful enough, pure enough, restrained enough, the world will respond. Bhima looks at him as if he's watching someone offer honey to a snake and acts surprised when the snake doesn't develop manners. Arjuna finally lifts his gaze. He doesn't thunder like Bhima. He doesn't calculate like Yudhishthira. His face holds that warrior's quiet, controlled but deep. He is thinking of teachers on the other side, of men he once saluted, of the way war doesn't just break bodies, it breaks the invisible threads between people. He wants justice, but he wants it clean. And clean justice is rare in this world. You can hear the camp outside shifting in its sleep, someone coughing, someone turning over on a blanket, the low murmur of sentries trading watch. The night wind nudges the tent cloth, and it flutters softly like a nervous breath. Inside, the argument tightens. Not loud, tighter. This is a family trying not to tear itself while the world waits for them to. Nakula and Sahadeva bring their own caution, careful as men stepping around a sleeping cobra. They know Hastinapura's court. They know how slippery words can be there, how easily a peace offered today becomes a trap tomorrow. They don't dismiss peace, they just don't trust it. Draupadi remains silent, and somehow that silence begins to shape the room. It reminds everyone that the price has already been paid, that there is no such thing as moving on from certain humiliations. You carry them, you learn to breathe around them, and you, standing at the edge of this lamplight, feel a heat behind your eyes, not from the lamps, from the sheer unfairness of it. They are not asking for a favor. They are negotiating for stolen air. Krishna finally shifts. Small movement, but it pulls attention like a magnet. He doesn't command the room. The room simply leans toward him. He speaks gently, not as a scold, not as a king, not even as a god, just as someone who understands exactly how pride works and exactly how ruin follows behind it. He reminds them of what an embassy is meant to do, not to beg, to make the refusal clear, to put daylight on the decision. So no one can pretend later that no one tried. He turns, eyes resting on Yudhishthira, then on Bhima. The middle path appears in the air between them like a thin bridge over a ravine. 5 villages, not the full kingdom, not a throne. 5 small patches of earth where 5 brothers can plant their feet without borrowing permission. It lands in the tent like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples everywhere. Bhima's head snaps slightly, as if he's been struck. 5 villages, for men who once ruled, for men who were born into a kingdom, for men who have been hunted, poisoned, burned, exiled, mocked. 5 villages feels insulting. And maybe that's the point. Yudhishthira's face tightens, then softens again, as if he's fighting with himself. You can see him swallow something bitter. He has spent a lifetime being the one who doesn't flinch. And yet, this makes him flinch. Because it means saying aloud, in front of everyone, that they are willing to live small. It means offering the Kauravas an easy out. It means letting the thieves keep most of what they stole, just to spare the world the storm. There's a strange, almost human comedy hiding under the sorrow. Kings, warriors, princes, men who have fought Rakshasas in forests and survived on roots and rainwater, now sitting around a lamp arguing over 5 villages like traders in a market. Except no one is haggling over grain. They're haggling over pride, over grief, over whether the world deserves one last chance. Bhima's hands clench again, his knuckles pale in the lamplight. You can almost hear his thoughts stomping around. If we ask for 5, they will give nothing. If we ask for everything, they will live nothing. So why kneel at all? And there it is, the wordless heart of his fury. The kneeling, because requesting even 5 villages feels like bowing your head to men who dragged your wife into a hall and called it sport. Yudhishthira looks toward Draupadi then, not to put weight on her, never that, but because her presence is the truth, neither argument can escape. She doesn't speak, she just meets his gaze, steady as a lamp flame that refuses to go out. And in that look, you feel what she is saying without sound. Peace is precious, but dignity is not nothing. Yudhishthira's breath comes slow. He nods almost to himself. If they ask for 5 villages and are refused, then the refusal will ring across the kingdoms like a temple bell, loud, impossible to ignore. And if they ask for 5 villages and are granted, then the earth is spared. not healed, spared. Bhima does not look satisfied. He looks contained, like a river forced behind a dam. Arjuna's shoulders ease a fraction, as if a tightened strap has been loosened. Not because he's happy, because the path is clearer now. Words first. Then, if words fail, the longbow. Krishna's eyes warm, just slightly, as if he's proud of them for making the hard choice instead of the satisfying one. And then, at last, a single brief line slips into the quiet. Yudhishthira, voice rough with humility, saying they will ask for 5 villages. One sentence. It feels heavier than armor. Outside, the night deepens. The lamps burn lower, their oil nearly spent. The tent smells more strongly now of smoke and warm cloth, and the faint metallic tang of weapons resting nearby. A moth throws itself at a flame again and again, stubborn as any prince in any palace. You feel the tiredness settle over the camp like a shawl. The meeting ends without ceremony. No triumphant vow, no bright confidence. Just men rising slowly, as if their bones have aged a decade in one evening. Draupadi stands last. Her anklets make the softest sound, barely there. But in this silence, it's enough to make you look. She passes the circle without a word, her expression calm in a way that doesn't mean peace. It means control. Bhima exhales hard through his nose and stalks toward the edge of the tent, needing air, needing space, needing something he can't crush with his hands. Arjuna lingers a moment, eyes on Krishna. There's devotion there, and worry too. The kind you feel for someone you love, who is walking into a lion's mouth, wearing a smile. Krishna rises, unhurried. He adjusts the edge of his garment. He looks as if he's preparing for a simple journey. Visit a king, speak politely, return by supper. But you know better. You step outside. The air is cooler now, a small mercy. Stars hang overhead like distant lamps in a temple too vast to enter. The ground under your feet is packed hard from 1,000 boots and hooves. In the distance, you can hear the soft creak of wheels being checked, the low murmurs of attendants, the quiet snort of horses. The chariot is being readied, not with fanfare, with the calm efficiency of people preparing for something they don't want to name. And as you stand there in the dark, wrapped in night air and smoke, and the faint perfume of fading garlands, you realize what that decision really was. Not 5 villages, a final attempt to save the world from itself. Tomorrow, at first light, Krishna will ride toward Hastinapura, carrying those 5 villages like an offering in his hands. Small, modest, almost unbearably humble. And the road will be waiting. And so, at first light, the chariot begins to move. Not with drums, not with banners snapping like a parade, just wheels turning over packed earth and horses blowing warm breath into the cool morning. You're walking beside it at first, because your legs don't want to accept what your mind already knows. The camp behind you is still half asleep, cook fires smoldering low, guards rubbing their eyes, someone muttering at a stubborn mule that refuses to be noble at dawn. Krishna sits as if he's headed to a festival. His blue cloth is neat, his posture is easy. He looks out at the waking road, the way people look out at a river, curious, fond, unafraid of its depth. The charioteer keeps the pace gentle. The wheels creak once, settle into their rhythm, and then that sound becomes the day's heartbeat. By the time the sun clears the horizon, the air has already changed. The last of the night's coolness slips away like a shy friend. Dust rises in pale sheets behind the horses, hooves. It coats your tongue. It finds the corners of your eyes. And ahead, fields, sugarcane standing tall and whispering, rice paddies hold in sky in their shallow water, mango trees heavy with leaves, their shade promising mercy. They never quite deliver. You glance back once. Upaplavya is shrinking, tents becoming specks, smoke becoming a thin thread. 13 years of waiting, and now it's all behind you. You fall in beside Satyaki as he rides. He's awake in the way warriors are awake, eyes sharp, shoulders loose, already imagining where danger might rise from the roadside like a snake warming itself on stone. He keeps looking at Krishna as if daring him to stop being calm. It's almost funny. In that way, a nervous mind finds humor where it can. You can practically feel Satyaki biting back the urge to shake Krishna by the shoulders and demand he take this seriously. But Krishna does take it seriously. You can tell because he doesn't rush, because he doesn't try to outrun what's coming. The road bends through small villages. At first, they don't notice. A potter keeps spinning his wheel. A woman keeps sweeping her threshold, flicking dust into a neat line as if dust can be disciplined. Children chase a hoop and nearly collide with the horses before someone yanks them back by the arm. Then someone sees who sits on that chariot. A pause spreads like ink in water. Hands stop mid-motion. A cow turns its head, blinking slowly, as if even the animals feel the hush. You can smell it: wood smoke, damp clay, morning milk, and the sharp green scent of crushed leaves under the wheels. Somewhere, a temple bell rings, thin and clear, and for a moment it feels like the land itself is making a small offering. People press their palms together. Some bow, some just stare, mouths slightly open, caught between devotion and fear. Because if Krishna is traveling like this, openly, plainly, it can only mean one thing. The world is about to change. Krishna lifts a hand in greeting like it's the most ordinary thing. He even smiles at a little boy peering from behind his mother's sari, the child's eyes huge as moons. And you think, this is the strange part. He looks like someone who could stop all of this with a flick of the wrist. Yet he rides on, dusty like the rest of you, letting the day grow hotter. By late morning, the sun is no longer kind. It presses down on your head and shoulders like a palm that won't lift. The road shimmers. Heat curls up from the ground in wavering curtains, turning distant trees into green ghosts. Your mouth tastes of grit and warm air. Sweat darkens cloth, then dries again, then returns. An endless cycle, like the land is teaching you patience through discomfort. You're close enough to hear the chariot's small sounds, the leather harness creaking, the gentle snort of the horses, the soft clink of metal where the reins are fastened. It's almost soothing. Almost. Satyaki rides close and finally gives voice to what's been chewing at him. Not a long speech, not a performance, just a blunt worry, offered like a stone in the palm. He asks what happens if Hastinapura refuses, if the court smiles, offers gifts, speaks sweetly, and still keeps its fist closed around the kingdom. You watch Krishna's face as he listens. No tightening of the jaw, no flare of anger, only that calm attention, like he's listening to rain. Krishna answers in a way that doesn't try to comfort. He reminds Satyaki that peace is being offered because it must be offered, that the door must be tested, even when you can already see the bar across it. And then, light as a feather, tossed into the air, he adds one brief line, almost playful. Even stone doors have seams. Satyaki huffs, half amused, half frustrated. Because seams or no seams, a stone door can still crush your fingers if you try to pry it open. The countryside keeps unfolding. You pass carts creaking under bundles of firewood. You pass women carrying water pots on their hips, bangles clicking softly with each step. You pass herds of goats that scatter, offended by the arrogance of royal wheels claiming the road. Once, a peacock crosses your path, dragging its jeweled tail through the dust like it owns the earth. It stops, looks directly at the horses, and refuses to move. The charioteer slows, patient. You feel the moment stretch, war and destiny held up by one stubborn bird. Krishna laughs under his breath, not loud, not mocking. Just the kind of laugh that says even the grandest journeys still have to negotiate with peacocks. Eventually, the peacock decides you're not worth its attention and struts away. The chariot moves again, as if nothing happened. But you notice your own shoulders loosen, a tiny release. The road begins to rise, not mountains, just long, gentle inclines where the land rolls like the back of a sleeping animal. Dry grasses rasp in the wind. The scent changes, less river, more sun-baked earth, wild herbs crushed underfoot. In the distance, you see a line of trees that promise shade, and beyond them, Vrukšthala. You've heard of it the way travelers hear of certain places, not because it's rich, not because it's loud, but because something quiet gathers there. As you approach, the air seems to soften. The wind carries sandalwood smoke, the faint sweetness of flowers offered at a small shrine, the murmur of voices not trading goods, not arguing politics, voices chanting in low, steady rhythm. You step down from the road into that calmer space, and the dust on your skin suddenly feels like proof you've traveled far enough to deserve rest. Sages have gathered, not in a grand hall, under trees, on simple mats, some wrapped in faded cloth, some wearing beads darkened by years of touch. Their hair is tied up or left loose, silver and black mixed together like ash and night. Their eyes lift as Krishna arrives. You feel it in your own chest, an odd tightening, like your breath wants to become prayer without being asked. The sages bless the journey. They offer water, they offer fruits, they offer words that have been spoken over kings and wanderers for generations. But beneath the blessings, you can sense their knowing. Their calm is not optimism, it's acceptance, like farmers watching clouds that won't break. One old sage leans forward, his gaze steady, and you can almost hear what he doesn't say, that a storm may be unavoidable, but you still plant your feet, you still speak what is right, you still light the lamp when night comes. Krishna bows with respect, that is effortless, natural as breathing. He doesn't act like a king among holy men. He acts like someone visiting elders he genuinely loves. You sit a little apart, listening to the chant rise and fall. The sound is gentle, wave-like. It smooths the sharp edges inside you. For a moment, the thought of Hastinapura feels far away, like a dark bird circling beyond the horizon. A breeze moves through the branches. Leaves tremble. Sunlight breaks into shifting patches on the ground, warm on your hands, cool on your wrists where the wind touches sweat. You could almost fall asleep right there, almost. Satyaki, restless as always, can't fully settle. He paces near the edge of the gathering, eyes scanning the road ahead as if he expects Duryodhana himself to leap out from behind a tree with a contract and a smirk. You catch his expression and feel a flicker of sympathy. This kind of stillness can be harder than battle. In battle, at least you know what your hands should do. Here, you just wait. Krishna rises when the blessings are done. He accepts a garland with a smile, lets it rest against his chest, and then steps back to the chariot, as if he's leaving a friend's home after a brief visit. No hesitation, no looking back. The road takes you onward, and the day turns to that heavy afternoon gold. Villages become fewer. Fields stretch longer. The sky feels wider, emptier. Birds circle overhead, crying out now and then. Their calls sound too sharp against the quiet, like someone snapping a twig in a silent room. You ride close enough to Krishna to watch him. He's unhurried, yes, but not careless. His eyes take in everything. The angle of the sun, the way people watch from doorways, the sudden hush that follows the chariot like a shadow. Once, you pass a group of farmers standing with their tools in hand. They don't wave, they don't speak, they just watch, their faces lined with the kind of worry that doesn't belong only to kings. Because when royal families fight, it's the soil that suffers first. The road bends near a small river. Water flashes between reeds. You smell wet mud and blooming lotus, cool and clean compared to the dust that's been living in your mouth all day. The horses drink. You rinse your hands and let the water run over your wrists. It's cold, enough to make you gasp quietly. You stand there, fingers dripping, and you realize you've been bracing your body for hours, like you're waiting for someone to shout an alarm. But there is no alarm, only this steady movement toward the place where decisions harden into fate. Satyaki comes to stand near you. He speaks again, lower now, as if the river itself deserves respect. He wonders aloud how a court can hear reason and still refuse it, how men can sit beneath the same roof as their elders and still choose pride over peace. You don't answer, because what answer could settle that? Krishna does not scold him for asking. He simply turns his head slightly, eyes warm, and gives Satyaki something steadier than comfort. He reminds him that people often cling to what burns them, that power tastes sweet even when it's poisoned, that some hearts only open after loss, and some never open at all. Then Krishna looks ahead again, as if he can already see Hastinapura's walls in the distance, as if he can already feel the chill of that great hall waiting for him. The sun begins to lower. The light turns honey-colored, thick and soft. Shadows lengthen across the road like long fingers. The heat finally loosens its grip, and the air grows almost pleasant, though your skin still feels coated in travel. You can smell evening cooking fires from far-off homes, lentils simmering, flatbread toasting, ghee melting into something comforting. Ordinary life, so close to something enormous. You realize that's what makes the journey eerie. Not that it's dangerous, that it isn't. The world is still spinning, children are still laughing somewhere, someone is still arguing over the price of grain, someone is still singing to keep time while grinding spices. And yet, every time the chariot passes, that ordinary sound dips, then slowly returns. Like a breath held and released, you're riding toward a city where polite words will be sharpened into weapons, toward a court that can dress itself in silk while it prepares for ash. But on this road, under this softening sky, Krishna remains himself, unhurried, almost playful, a man with dust on his feet and divinity in his bones, traveling as if time is his companion, not his enemy. And you, moving beside that chariot, feel the land growing quieter, not asleep, waiting. As the last light slides along the road ahead, you can sense it. Hastinapura is drawing near. and the air itself seems to hold its breath, saving it for the moment the gates open. The smell changes before you even see the walls. Dust gives way to something older. Stone warmed all day, neem leaves bruised underfoot, and the faint, sharp bite of river mud drifting on the breeze. The gates of Hastinapura appear on the horizon. The welcome party is already assembled. They're not subtle about it either. Banners snap high above the road, bright as fresh turmeric. Polished spearheads catch the last sun and throw it back into your eyes. Drummers keep a steady beat that says, very politely, "We are watching you arrive." And then come the elephants, massive patient mountains with painted foreheads, bells at their ankles chiming softly with each step. Their handlers walk like men escorting wealth itself, careful not to look impressed by their own spectacle. You're still close enough to Krishna's chariot to feel the heat of the horses. Their flanks shine with sweat, and the leather straps creak with every breath. Satyaki rides nearby, straight-backed, alert, already reading faces in the crowd like their battlefield maps. And there, moving forward through all that ceremony, comes the king's arrangement. A cluster of officials in spotless cloth, flower garlands piled on their arms, trays gleaming with gifts, gold, fine cloth, perfume in sealed jars, the kind of welcome that tries to wrap around your shoulders like a silk net. You can feel it in your chest, even if no one says it aloud. This is the court's way of smiling without yielding. Conch shells sound from the city side, long and low, and the whole crowd shifts as Krishna is recognized. Some bow quickly, some hesitate, some do that stiff half bow that means their pride is arguing with their manners. If you stand just right, you catch the sense all at once. Jasmine crushed in garlands, key lamps smoking near the gate, and the hot metallic smell of armor warmed by sun. This is Hastinapura welcoming a guest, or trying to. They lead Krishna forward with practiced grace, offering the finest guest house, cool courtyards, carved pillars, beds spread with white cloth so clean it looks unreal. They offer delicacies, sweet drinks, servants, musicians, everything a king gives when he wants to look generous. The officials' smiles are smooth, almost shiny. And Krishna simply doesn't take the bait. He listens, calm as a river in deep summer. He looks at their trays of gifts the way a man looks at a pile of stones someone insists are jewels. His expression stays gentle, almost amused, as if he's watching children build a palace out of sand. You're close enough to see the dust on his feet, not a god in a painting, a traveler at the city gate, refusing to be bought with comfort. He tells them, softly but clearly, that he won't eat there. Not today. Not before he's done what he came to do. The food of kings can wait. For a breath, it's as if the whole welcome party forgets how to breathe. A tray bearer's hands dip just slightly, and he has to steady the gold bowl before it tips. A garland slips from someone's wrist, and marigolds tumble onto the road, bright petals against brown dust. The officials blink like men woken too quickly from a pleasant dream. Because refusing a king's hospitality isn't just bad manners, it's a message. It moves through the crowd in a silent ripple, shoulders tightening, whispers beginning, eyes darting toward the inner city, as if someone might already be running to report it. You can practically hear the thought racing ahead. He refused, and then Krishna makes the choice that lands like a stone dropped in a still pond. He says he will eat at Vidura's home, not the royal guest house, not Duryodhana's rich tables, not the places that smell like power. Vidura, the king's brother by blood, but not by comfort, a man who walks through palaces as if they're full of smoke he doesn't want to inhale, a man whose wealth is mostly in his spine. The officials' faces do something complicated, part shock, part offense, part panic. Someone tries to recover quickly, like a dancer who nearly tripped. They offer to escort Krishna, of course. They insist on providing guards, a proper carriage, something grand enough to match the city's pride. Krishna accepts the escort the way you accept a child's insistence on helping carry water, kindly, but without changing your pace. And so, the procession shifts. All that planned grandeur turns awkward, like a song that suddenly changes key. You move with them into the city, and Hastinapura swallows you whole. The streets are broad near the gates, paved and swept, but the air is alive with ordinary things. Vendors calling out the last of their sweets, oil lamps being lit one by one as dusk thickens, cows moving slowly, unconcerned by politics. Somewhere, a woman laughs, quick and bright, and it feels almost shocking that laughter still exists here. You can smell fried gram flour, crushed coriander, and the smoky sweetness of burning cow dung cakes used for cooking. Above it all hangs sandalwood from temple courtyards, steady and calm. And every few steps, you feel eyes on Krishna, some curious, some worshipful, some calculating. A young guard on the edge of the escort keeps craning his neck as if expecting divinity to leak out like light from a cracked pot. Another looks stubbornly at the road, determined not to be impressed. Satyaki catches your glance and, with a flicker of expression, seems to think, this city has too many faces and none of them sleep well. The route turns away from the grandest lanes. The buildings get smaller, the walls less decorated, the air less perfumed and more honest. Cooking smoke, old wood, damp earth. And then you're there, Vidura's home. It's not poor, not truly, but it's simple. No towered gate, no courtyard designed to make you feel small. The doorway is plain wood, smoothed by years of hands. A lamp burns near the threshold, its flame wavering in the evening breeze, like it's listening. You step inside and feel the temperature drop a little. Stone floors cool underfoot. The sounds of the city soften, replaced by the intimate noises of a household. Water being poured, cloth rustling, someone moving pots in a kitchen. Vidura comes forward with the kind of welcome that doesn't need decoration. His eyes look tired, but steady. He bows deeply, not like an official performing respect, but like a man who has waited a long time to offer it. Krishna receives him warmly, as if arriving not at a political ally's house, but at a friend's. And then you see her, Kunti. She's in the dimmer inner part of the house, where the lamplight doesn't quite reach. Her hair is streaked with grey now, pulled back simply. The ornaments of queenship are absent, and somehow that absence is louder than jewelry. She rises slowly. You can almost feel the weight in that movement. Years of waiting, worrying, swallowing fear like bitter medicine. This is the mother of the men in the camp at Upaplavya. The mother who watched them go into exile and then watched the years crawl by. Her eyes fix on Krishna. Something in her face tightens and softens at once, like a knot being pulled and loosened. The air smells of warm rice and clarified butter. There's cumin in it, and something green, maybe fresh curry leaves crushed into a simple stew. Not a king's feast. A real meal. You sit on the floor with the others, close enough to the kitchen that the heat of the cooking fire touches your cheek when the door curtain shifts. A brass pot clinks softly. Someone ladles food with care, as if careful hands can keep the world from breaking. Krishna sits easily, cross-legged, as if palaces and battlefields and forests are all the same ground beneath him. Vidura serves with his own hands. That alone feels like a quiet thunderclap. In the city of hierarchy and pride, the wisest man in the court is acting like a simple host, and the greatest guest in the world is letting him. It should feel humiliating. Instead, it feels clean. Kunti watches Krishna eat. Her gaze doesn't leave him, as if she's trying to memorize the sight for the days ahead. Her hands rest in her lap, fingers interlaced so tightly the knuckles pale. When she finally speaks, it's not in long speeches. It's in questions that carry whole years inside them. She asks about her sons, how they are, what they look like now, whether the forest left marks on them that a mother can't touch away. She asks about their resolve, and whether Yudhishthira still hopes too much. She asks quietly if peace is even possible anymore. You can hear the effort it takes for her to keep her voice steady. A woman can be brave for years. That doesn't mean she doesn't get tired. Krishna answers her gently, without rushing. He doesn't promise what can't be promised. He doesn't feed her false sweetness. He gives her something steadier, presence, attention, the sense that she is not alone in carrying this. Outside, a dog barks twice and then goes quiet. Somewhere farther off, a temple bell rings for evening worship, its sound drifting through the city like a thread of silver. Vidura listens, his face still. When Kunti speaks of the dice hall, of that day that never truly ended, his jaw tightens just slightly, like a man biting down on words he's said 1,000 times. And in the middle of it, a small, almost absurd thing happens. A servant arrives from the palace with another offering, more gifts, more delicacies, as if the court is trying again, harder, to pull Krishna into its velvet net. The servant looks nervous standing in Vidura's simple doorway, holding a tray that belongs in marble halls. For a moment, the tray seems bigger than the poor man carrying it. He glances around, confused, like he expected to deliver this to a tower, not a modest home that smells like honest food. Vidura receives the tray politely, but he doesn't look tempted. He looks mildly annoyed, the way you look at someone who keeps knocking while you're trying to eat. Krishna, calm as ever, doesn't take anything from it. He lets the offering sit there like an unanswered question. The servant retreats, relieved to escape, and you can almost imagine him running back through the streets to report. He still won't accept. Dinner continues. Simple rice, a lentil stew that smells like comfort, a small dish of vegetables spiced just enough to wake the tongue without making the eyes water, a little curd, cool and soothing against the day's dust. You taste it, and it's almost shocking how good simplicity can be when it's offered without strings. The lamp flames flicker lower as the evening deepens. Shadows pool in corners. The city's noise fades into a distant murmur, like the ocean heard from far inland. Kunti's voice becomes softer. She asks, carefully, like someone touching a bruise, whether Krishna will be safe in the hall tomorrow. She knows what kind of men sit there. She knows what pride does when it feels cornered. For a moment, her eyes look older than her face. Not the age of years, the age of grief. Krishna's response is gentle enough to ease a tight chest. He tells her not to fear for him. He tells her fear belongs elsewhere, on those who confuse arrogance for strength. He says one brief thing that stays in the air after it's spoken, warm and steady. I eat where love lives. It isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. Kunti's shoulders drop the smallest amount, as if some inner part of her finally unclenched. Her eyes shine, but she doesn't let tears fall. She has held too much too long to spill easily now. Vidura's wife brings more water, and the clay cup is cool against your fingers. You can hear the water pour, steady as breath. In the courtyard, leaves rustle. A night breeze slips in and carries the smell of jasmine from somewhere outside, delicate and teasing, as if the city still remembers sweetness. Later, when the meal is finished, Vidura leads Krishna to a clean resting place. No silk canopy, no musicians, just quiet. You settle too, and for a moment you feel what it's like to be in a home where no one is performing. The floor is cool. The night air strokes your skin, easing the day's heat away. Somewhere in the distance, Hastinapura's palace is still lit, still awake, still buzzing with the insult of refusal. In Vidura's home, the lamps are fewer. The silence is thicker. It wraps around you like a shawl. And Kunti, before she withdraws into her own rooms, looks once more toward Krishna, as if trying to hold on to the fragile shape of hope without crushing it. Outside, the city keeps breathing. Inside, the night settles, and you can feel it coming, even as your eyelids grow heavy. Morning will bring the assembly hall, the polished floor, the careful smiles, the serpent-coiled tension of men who have already decided what they will not give. For now, though, you are here, in a quiet house that smells like cumin and lamp smoke, with a mother who has waited 13 years for someone to return her sons to her, with a messenger of peace who refused a king's feast and chose instead a humble meal, because the heart of this city is not in its palace. It's in the houses where truth is still spoken softly over simple food while the night holds its breath. Sleep doesn't come easy in Vidura's house, but morning comes anyway. It arrives on bare feet, soft, persistent, carrying the thin clang of temple bells and the first calls of vendors outside the lane. The air is cooler than it has any right to be in Hastinapura, and for a moment you can pretend the day will be gentle. Then you remember where you are going. Vidura's courtyard is still dim when lamps are pinched out one by one. The last curls of lamp smoke cling to the rafters. A servant pours water over hands over a brass basin, and the water makes that quiet, obedient sound it always makes, like it has never witnessed a palace in its life. Krishna steps out as if he slept in perfect peace, hair tied, eyes clear, that faint, almost mischievous calm on his face. The kind of calm that makes everyone else feel slightly underdressed inside their own skin. You fall in beside him, and as you walk, you feel the city waking around you. Hastinapura stirring like a great animal that doesn't want to be disturbed. Dust lifts under sandals. The scent of cow dung fires rises from cooking hearths. Somewhere, a woman shakes out a cloth from an upper window, and a shower of tiny grit sparkles in the early light. You're heading to the heart of it. The assembly hall, the place where words are supposed to save lives. The street widens as you near the palace precincts. Guard posts appear like punctuation marks, spears, shields, stern faces that try to look like stone. A few men stare too long at Krishna and then remember themselves and look away, suddenly interested in their own toes. You can almost hear thoughts clicking behind their eyes. Envoy, guest, god, trouble. The palace walls loom higher than they did yesterday. Or maybe your shoulders have changed. The stone holds last night's warmth, and when you brush close, you can feel it. Sun-baked, confident, indifferent, peacocks cry from somewhere within. That sharp, lonely sound that always feels like it's meant for an empty courtyard. At the great doors, the air cools. Shade swallows you. The smell shifts. Less smoke, more polished wood, oil rubbed into pillars, flowers that have been arranged with the severity of politics. You're standing at the threshold where men have smiled while sharpening knives. Inside, footsteps echo, not hurried, not timid, just steady. Krishna moves forward and you move with him, and the hall begins to open like a vast mouth. It's bigger than memory allows. Columns rise like tree trunks carved from stone. The floor is so polished you can see blurred reflections of ankles and hems, and if you breathe carefully, you can smell it. Sandalwood paste, old incense, and the faint metallic bite of weapons waiting somewhere nearby. Courtiers fill the sides, silks whisper. Jewelry chimes softly when someone shifts. The room is crowded, yet it feels oddly empty, as if the space has been cleared for something invisible to enter. Your skin prickles. You're not imagining it. Every eye finds Krishna. Some stare as if trying to measure him. Some look away as if looking is dangerous. A few, very few, watch with something like relief, as if a lamp has been carried into a room they were tired of stumbling through. Ahead, the throne. Dhritarashtra sits there, robed and heavy with kingship, face turned slightly, as if listening for the room's shape. His hands rest on the arms of the throne, fingers thick, adorned, tightened by years of holding on. He cannot see Krishna, and yet his whole body leans toward him, like a tree bending toward water. Near the king, you spot Vidura, standing in his simple dignity that makes everyone else's grandeur feel slightly embarrassed. He looks as if he hasn't slept either. His gaze flicks once toward Krishna, then toward the princes, then back again. Hope stretched thin, but still unbroken. And there, like a mountain that has learned to sit, is Bhishma. He looks older in the morning light. Not weak, never weak, but weathered. His white hair frames a face that has watched generations rise and fall like waves. His eyes are open and calm, and yet something in them is braced, like a man hearing thunder far away. Beside him sits Drona, the teacher whose hands once guided young princes' grips on longbows. He holds himself straight, but not easy. His jaw is set as if he's been chewing on a bitter seed for years and still hasn't swallowed it. The lines around his eyes are the lines of affection turned into duty and duty turned into a chain. And then you see him, Duryodhana. He sits with the confidence of a man who believes the world is a thing that can be owned. Gold flashes on his arms, at his throat, across his chest. His posture is relaxed, almost bored. Like this assembly is another ornament he's wearing. He looks at Krishna the way a gambler looks at a loaded die, certain, amused, ready. There's a strange moment, small, nearly nothing, when you feel the hall. Inhale, as if every pillar, every banner, every listening ear has taken a single breath and is holding it. Krishna is led forward to the place prepared for him. Not the throne, never the throne. A seat of honor, yes. A seat that says, guest, envoy, a man to be heard, not a man to be obeyed. Krishna sits anyway, untroubled by where the carpenters decided his cushion should go. He sits with the ease of someone who doesn't need furniture to prove anything. And then, slowly, the formality begins. You feel it in your bones, the way a court arranges itself like a dance. Elders first, princes poised, ministers leaning in, servants still as statues along the walls. Even the air seems to settle into a quieter tone, as if loud breathing would be an offense. Dhritarashtra speaks first, in the careful way kings speak when they want to sound gentle while remaining in charge. His voice fills the hall warmly enough, but it carries strain beneath it, like cloth pulled tight. He welcomes Krishna. He praises him. He calls him dear. He expresses sorrow for the brewing conflict, the way a man might lament a fire while keeping the oil jars close. Then he invites Krishna to say what he has come to say. This is the moment. You can feel it. Your palms want to sweat, even though the hall is cool. Krishna rises. No flourish, no theatrical pause. Just the simple movement of someone standing up to do a necessary thing. When he begins to speak, his voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It rolls through the hall like steady water, finding every corner without effort. He speaks of kinship first, how these men are tied together by blood and marriage, by teachers and grandfathers and shared childhoods. He reminds them of the years that were taken, the insults that still hang in the air like smoke that won't clear. He doesn't spit the words like accusations. He lays them down like stones. Then he offers peace. Not a vague peace, not a dreamy prayer. A peace with boundaries, a peace with land. He speaks of a kingdom that could be whole again if pride would loosen its fist. He makes room for honor on both sides, even though you can feel how little room there truly is. He reduces demands the way a man shaves down a piece of wood, again and again, until what remains is almost too small to hold. 5 villages, just enough earth for 5 brothers to stand on without begging. He offers that, and when he offers it, the whole does something odd. Some faces harden, some soften, some blink as if the simplicity of it stings. A few men glance at each other quickly, like they've just realized how small the request is and how large the refusal will look. You catch Bhishma's expression. Not surprise, not approval, recognition, as if he's watching a cartwheel roll toward a rut he's seen before and knows it will break no matter how gently the driver pulls the reins. Krishna keeps going. He speaks of sons and fathers, of lineages that will be torn apart if this continues. He speaks of what it would mean to choose peace while there is still time to choose it. He offers paths, so many paths, that it almost becomes painful, a compromise, a division, a return of what was taken, even a partial return. Anything that prevents the flood. The hall listens, and yet you can sense it, like a snake under a mat. Some men are listening only to find the moment they can refuse. You're sitting in the Assembly of Serpents, and they are perfectly still. Dhritarashtra's face tilts, listening, absorbing. His fingers tighten and loosen on the throne arms. He wants something in this to be possible. You feel that. He wants it like a thirsty man wants a cup, desperately, clumsily. But then his chin lifts slightly, and you know the other thirst in him too. The thirst for his son's approval. The thirst that has ruled this hall for years. Krishna's words fall into that conflict and do not settle cleanly. The elders murmur softly, just a ripple. Advisors shift, bangles chime once and stop. Somewhere, a fly buzzes and dares to live in the space between empires. Krishna concludes without begging. He doesn't need to beg. He simply finishes as if setting down a final offering. And for a heartbeat, the hall is quiet enough that you can hear your own breath. Then, movement begins again, slow and careful. Bhishma speaks, not in a long speech, not in a dramatic declaration, more like a man admitting what he already knows. He acknowledges the sense in Krishna's words, the rightness, the danger. Drona's gaze drops briefly, as if looking at his own hands and remembering smaller ones, students' hands, held in his grip. Vidura's posture shifts forward, just slightly. A man who has been holding his hope like a candle in wind, seeing the flame flicker but not go out. For a moment, just a moment, you feel the room could choose the gentler road, and then you hear the small, sharp sound of laughter. Not loud, not joyous. A single amused breath from the wrong place, Duryodhana. He hasn't moved much, but now he leans forward as if he's finally decided to be entertained. His lips curve, his eyes gleam. It's the look of a man who has already counted the board and decided he can't lose. He rises, and the air changes. You feel it immediately, as if warmth has entered the hall from nowhere, as if the shadows under the pillars have tightened. Even the jewelry seems to quiet, as though gold itself doesn't want to draw attention right now. Duryodhana stands tall, shoulders squared, hair carefully arranged, ornaments catching light in little flashes that make him look almost sunlit. Gilden, proud, exactly as everyone says. But there's something else too, a stiffness behind the shine. He begins to speak, and he does not bother with softness. He dismisses the offer the way a man brushes ash off his sleeve. He speaks of rights claimed by victory, of the past, treated like a sealed jar no one is allowed to reopen. He talks as if the dice game settled everything, as if humiliation can be made holy by calling it lawful. He speaks of the Pandavas as though they are guests in their own world. He speaks of Krishna's peace as though it is weakness. And you can feel the men around you reacting in tiny telling ways, some pleased, some alarmed, some simply resigned. A few faces go blank, like shutters closing. Bhishma's eyes narrow the smallest amount, a sliver of sorrow sharpening into something harder. Vidura's mouth presses into a line. He looks like a man watching someone step toward a cliff and call it courage. Dhritarashtra's head tilts again, listening, and his shoulders sag the slightest bit. It's the sag of a father who wants his son to stop and knows he won't. Duryodhana's voice grows firmer, sharper. He makes it clear that sharing even a small piece of land feels to him like surrender, like humiliation, like letting his enemies breathe the same air as him. His pride sits on his tongue like a jewel he refuses to set down. And then he says it, the refusal that feels less like a decision and more like a door slammed with both hands. He will not yield, not 5 villages, not even the smallest portion, not even, he throws it out with contempt, as much as the point of a needle. The words hang there, a single sentence, small as a pin, heavy as a mountain. You feel a chill move up your arms despite the warming air. The hall seems to tighten around that phrase, pillars and people and politics drawing close, as if the building itself wants to listen to what comes next. Krishna's face does not change. That's what is so unsettling. No flare of anger, no wounded pride, no surprise. Only that steady gaze, as if he's looking at a child who has finally said aloud what he's been muttering for years. He turns his eyes slowly across the assembly. across Bhishma, across Drona, across Vidura, across the many who sit with fine clothes and careful expressions, hoping responsibility will pass over them like rain that falls somewhere else. And you feel it too, that awareness spreading. This isn't only one man refusing, it's a room full of men deciding what they will allow. The silence deepens. Someone coughs and immediately regrets it. The sound is too human for a moment this large. A faint breeze stirs through the hall from some high window, carrying a trace of marigold and hot stone. It touches your cheek and vanishes. Duryodhana looks around as if he expects applause. He doesn't get it. Not openly, but he gets something else. Little nods, little smirks, the quiet loyalty of men who have already tied themselves to his chariot. He shifts his weight. His ornaments clink softly, like coins being counted. And then, because pride rarely stops at refusal, he steps further into the open, as if moving from argument towards something darker. You can feel it in your stomach before you understand it with your mind. The hall has crossed a line. The air is different now. The eyes of guards flick toward one another. Hands tighten around spear shafts. And Duryodhana, golden in the center of the great hall, stands with the certainty of a man about to do something he believes will prove his power. Beside you, Krishna remains calm, still, waiting, as if he has been standing at the edge of this moment all along, watching it approach like a storm you can smell before you see. But Duryodhana has one more move, the worst one. It happens the way a pot tips from a shelf, slow until it isn't. One breath, the court is still pretending this is diplomacy. The next breath, Duryodhana's chin lifts and his eyes harden into a decision. You feel it in your skin first. The tiny hairs on your arms rise as if a storm has leaned close. The great hall smells of ghee lamps and heated stone. Somewhere, someone's garland is wilting. The sweet marigold turns faintly sour in the warm air. Duryodhana doesn't argue anymore. He doesn't plead his case. He reaches for something cruder, simpler, like a man who has run out of words and decided ropes will do. He signals the guards. At first, they don't move. Because even they, men with spears and straight backs, hesitate when the order is to put hands on Krishna. Their armor gives a soft clink as they shift, unsure if they heard correctly. Then the captain steps forward anyway, because a full stomach is a mantra. You're standing there in the middle of the court, and you can almost hear the thought passing between the soldiers. How do you arrest someone who looks like he belongs everywhere? Krishna doesn't flinch. He doesn't even look surprised. His face stays relaxed, almost gentle, like he's watching a child try to threaten the ocean with a clay cup. A few more guards come forward. Spears tilt. The points catch the lamplight. It's bright enough to sting your eyes. And the hall goes so quiet that you can hear fabric whisper when someone shifts their weight. Silk against skin, armor against bone, a court full of breath being held. You glance toward Bhishma. The old warrior's jaw tightens, as if he's biting down on words he's not allowed to speak. He's seen vows do terrible things. He's seen pride eat whole families. But even he looks strained now, like the air itself has become too heavy to inhale. Drona sits with his hands still, but his gaze is sharp, not angry, not calm, torn, like a longbow drawn too far. Vidura's face changes, the way a lamp changes when oil runs low. He looks sick with it. Not fear, disgust. And Dhritarashtra, blind on his throne, leans forward slightly, head turned as if he can hear the shape of the moment. His fingers grip the armrest, tight, tighter. The guards step closer. You can smell them now. Sweat under metal, leather warmed by bodies, dust from the courtyard clinging to their hems. Men who have run miles and fought battles, now being asked to do something that feels wrong, even to them. One of them reaches out. His hand hovers near Krishna's arm. This is the moment. You can feel your heart thump once, slow and heavy, like a drum in a distant festival that has suddenly fallen out of rhythm. And then Krishna smiles, not a mocking smile, not a cruel one, just a small, quiet curve of the mouth, as if he's acknowledging something inevitable, as if he's saying, without speaking, "This is what you chose." The soldier's fingers brush Krishna's sleeve, and the world breaks open. It doesn't explode like fire. It opens like a sky you didn't know was there. Light pours into the hall, but not the kind that comes from lamps. This light has depth. It has distance. It has the cold shimmer of stars and the warm blaze of suns, all at once. You blink hard, and blinking doesn't help. Krishna is still standing there, right where he was. But he is also more. His form expands without moving. It fills the room without crushing it. It's infinity politely stepping into a space meant for politics. The guards stagger back. Their spears dip, not in attack, in surrender. Their hands lose strength like ropes soaked in water. And you, yes, you, standing among courtiers and kings, you feel your breath catch as if you've climbed a mountain too quickly. The air tastes different now, sharp, clean, like rain about to fall on hot earth. Krishna's body becomes a doorway. Within him, you see worlds, not painted worlds, not imagined worlds, living worlds. There are oceans turning, dark and immense, with moonlight trembling on their surfaces. There are rivers like silver threads, winding through forests so green they hurt to look at. There are cities glittering like jewelry scattered across the night. You see mountains, massive, patient, wearing snow-like crowns. You see fire, not destructive fire, sacred fire, altar fire, the fire of endings and beginnings, the fire that cooks rice, and the fire that takes it all away. Everything is there. Everything. The hall itself becomes small, not because it shrinks, but because your mind suddenly remembers how large reality truly is. Somewhere close, someone falls to their knees. The sound is soft, like a sack of grain set down gently. Bhishma bows. The ancient warrior who has held himself upright through a lifetime of war and vows bends like a tree in a storm. His forehead touches the floor. Drona bows too, and it looks like relief, like a man finally allowed to admit what his heart already knew. All around them, men who love power are suddenly faced with something that doesn't care about their power at all. The courtiers who were so careful with their expressions, now they forget their faces entirely. Awe steals their masks. Even the lamps seem dim, their little flames embarrassed by the brightness in the room. You feel heat on your cheeks, but it isn't the heat of torches. It's the warmth of being seen by something vast, not judged, seen. And inside that vastness, within Krishna, you glimpse shapes that should not fit inside a human form. Beings with radiance like molten gold, beings with eyes like storm clouds, great terrible faces that belong to time itself, opening and closing like cosmic doors. You see the wheel of days turning, seasons passing in a blink, leaves falling, new leaves rising, children becoming old men, kingdoms swelling and crumbling like sand castles at the edge of a tide. The smell changes again. The hall's incense is still there, but now there's something else. ozone, like lightning, has just struck nearby. A clean bite in the air. The guards run, not all at once, not heroically. They simply forget their mission and remember their legs. Spears clatter to the floor. Sandals slap stone. Armor rattles like pots in a kitchen when someone drops a tray. One man tries to back away with dignity and succeeds for exactly 3 steps before he trips over a ceremonial rug. The rug, of course, chooses this moment to behave like an enemy. He scrambles up and flees anyway, dignity left behind like a dropped coin. And Duryodhana stands there rooted, not because he is brave, because pride is a kind of paralysis. His ornaments still gleam, his chest still rises and falls, his eyes stay fixed forward, refusing to look away, as if he can outstare the universe. But you can see it now. His defiance has become lonely. The hall is full of bowed heads and trembling hands, full of men who, for one heartbeat, have remembered their place in something larger than their grudges. Only Duryodhana keeps his chin lifted. Only Duryodhana acts as if this is still a contest of wills, as if stubbornness can wrestle infinity into a corner. Dhritarashtra makes a sound then, a small broken sound that doesn't quite become a word. He sits forward on the throne as if pulled by a rope, and something happens that makes the room shudder. Dhritarashtra's eyes, those eyes that have lived in darkness, change. It's subtle at first, a widening, a focus. Then his face turns upward toward Krishna's blazing form, and you realize with a jolt that he can see, not in the way people see a cup or a wall. He sees like a man who has been drowning and suddenly breaks the surface. His mouth opens, his lips tremble. For a moment, the blind king looks like a child who has wandered into a temple at midnight and found the deity standing in the courtyard. Sight is too much and not enough. His hands shake on the throne's arms, and tears spill down his cheeks without shame. In that brief window, one borrowed heartbeat, he sees what his son tried to bind. He sees the measure of the mistake, and the sorrow in his face is so raw that it hushes even the restless courtiers. You're close enough to hear his breath hitch. The air itself seems to press on him, gentle and immense. Then, as quickly as it came, that sight recedes. Dhritarashtra blinks. The light leaves his eyes, and darkness returns like a curtain falling. He sags back into the throne, as if the weight of the world has settled onto his shoulders again. His fingers grope for certainty, find only carved wood. The hall stays bright for one more long breath. Krishna, still vast, still terrible, still beautiful, holds the court in that silence, not threatening, not pleading, simply present. And then, like a river withdrawing after flood season, the cosmic form draws back. The stars vanish from the walls. The oceans fold into invisibility. The sense of endless distance softens. The air becomes air again, warm, heavy, human. The lamps remember their lamps, and their flames resume their small, faithful dancing. Krishna stands where he always stood. A man in a yellow cloth, a faint smile, calm eyes, as if nothing happened at all, except that every soul in the hall has been rearranged. You can hear people breathing again, shocked by their own lungs. A courtier wipes his forehead with the edge of his shawl and then freezes, realizing he just did something very ordinary in a moment that was not. Bhishma remains bowed a moment longer before lifting his head, his expression full of something like devotion and grief braided together. Drona looks downward, as if he's staring into the choices he will soon have to make and finding no comfort there. Vidura rises, Not dramatically, not with speeches. He simply stands as if he can't sit in this place another instant. His face is tight, his eyes bright with anger held in check. He looks at Dhritarashtra, then at Duryodhana, and you can almost feel what he wants to do. Shake the king, seize the prince by the shoulders, drag sense into them like water into cracked lips. But he doesn't. He turns away instead, and that turning feels like a door closing inside the palace itself. Duryodhana finally moves. He doesn't run, he doesn't bow, he doesn't soften. He stands alone in the wake of what everyone just saw, and somehow he manages to look offended, like the universe has been impolite to him. His mouth tightens, his eyes glitter. He refuses, even now, even after the hall held infinity in its breath. You're standing there, and you realize something chilling in how ordinary it feels. A man can witness the vastness of Krishna and still cling to his own small hunger. He can see the ocean and insist on his puddle. Krishna doesn't strike him down. Krishna doesn't call lightning. He simply looks at him, steady, patient, and the patience feels heavier than anger. He turns slightly then, as if gathering the court back into the proper shape of things. The moment of cosmic terror fades, leaving behind human faces again. Men who will return to their habits, their factions, their petty loyalties. But the silence has changed. It's not just awkward now, it's haunted, and you can feel it in your bones. Something has been offered, something has been revealed, and still a choice is being made. Krishna steps away from the place where the gods tried to surround him. His feet make almost no sound on the stone, barely a whisper. You catch the scent of sandalwood as he passes, warm, steady, familiar, like the comforting smell of a temple corridor after the aarti has ended. Behind him, the court begins to stir again, uncertain what to do with their own survival. Some avert their eyes, embarrassed by their fear. Some glance toward Duryodhana, waiting for him to pretend this didn't happen. Some glance toward Dhritarashtra, hoping the king will finally become a king. Dhritarashtra sits very still, as if afraid that any movement will make the memory vanish entirely. Duryodhana's face stays set. He has lost something and doesn't admit it. He has refused something and doesn't understand the cost. Krishna leaves the center of the hall behind, and you feel the air cool by a single degree, like a fever breaking. The attempted chains are gone, spears on the floor, soldiers scattered, the plan dissolved like salt in water. And yet the heart of the refusal remains, standing upright in gold and pride. Outside, the day continues. Birds still cross the sky above Hastinapura. Dust still lifts under sandals in the courtyard. The city still smells of cooking fires and horses and sun-warmed brick. Inside, the hall feels like it has been visited by something that cannot be forgotten, even if it will be ignored. Krishna moves toward the exit with the calm of someone who has done all that can be done in public. And you sense, without anyone announcing it, that he will try one more door, not in the assembly, not with a room full of witnesses, somewhere quieter, somewhere a single man might still be reached. The light outside waits, fierce and golden, and the palace, still full of men and plans, holds its breath again as Krishna goes. The corridors of Hastinapura feel narrower after infinity has filled them. Servants press themselves into doorways. Courtiers suddenly remember errands in the opposite direction. Even the palace dogs, bold a moment ago, tuck their tails and choose silence. You walk behind Krishna as he leaves the hall, and the stone under your feet is cool where the sun hasn't reached. The air smells of old incense, fresh dust, and that sharp, anxious sweat people get when they've just watched their plans turn to ash. Outside, the courtyard is painfully ordinary. A cart squeaks by with vegetables. A groom argues with a horse that has decided today is a wonderful day to be stubborn. Somewhere, a conch sounds, too cheerful, like it didn't get the message. Krishna doesn't hurry. He moves with that same unbothered steadiness, as if he's strolling to a riverside grove, not trying to stop a war that's already sharpening its teeth. But Krishna isn't finished. There's one more conversation to have, not with the whole court watching, not with elders holding their breath and young princes itching for applause, with one man who stands like a pillar in Duryodhana's shadow, wearing pride the way other men wear armor, Karna. You feel it before you see him. A presence on the upper terraces, where the palace catches the last light, where the breeze finally finds you and slides over your skin like cool silk. Below, the city hums, cooking fires waking up, metal workers tapping, children shouting and being shushed. Above, the sky is already turning the color of saffron and rose. You climb the steps with Krishna, and the stone is warm from the day's heat. At the terrace edge, Karna stands alone. Not lonely, never that, just separate. His jewelry catches the sun and throws it back like a challenge. His shoulders are squared. His gaze is aimed at the horizon, as if he can stare down tomorrow by sheer stubbornness. You're close enough to hear the faint clink of his armlets when he shifts. Close enough to smell the oil in his hair, the faint metallic tang of his armor, and the sandalwood that always seems to follow the powerful. Krishna approaches like a friend, not like an enemy. No thunder, no cosmic blaze, just the quiet scrape of sandals and the soft, steady breathing of someone who is about to place a truth in another man's hands. Karna turns. For a moment, you see it, the flicker of wariness, like a sword half drawn. He had watched the whole. He had seen soldiers scatter. He had seen elders bow. And still, he stands. Krishna speaks to him gently, the way you speak when you're trying not to spook a startled deer. He doesn't flatter. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't perform. He tells Karna he knows him. He tells him he knows where he came from. And then, as the sun begins to dip, Krishna opens the one door Karna has kept bolted his whole life. He tells him about a young woman long ago, Kunti, before she was anyone's queen, before she had sons who became legends. He tells him about a child born in secret, because the world is not kind to unmarried mothers, not even noble ones. He tells him about a basket, about a river, about a baby set afloat with nothing but prayers and desperation. The terrace wind picks up as Krishna speaks, fluttering the edge of his yellow cloth. And you watch Karna's face change slowly, as if each sentence is a hand pulling away a veil. First, disbelief, then anger, sharp and immediate, because anger is easier than grief. Then something quieter, like a lamp being lit in a room Karna didn't know existed. Your throat tightens without permission, because you can feel what it means. A man who has spent his life being called outsider, low-born, unworthy. A man who learned to stand tall by refusing to bend. And now the ground shifts under him. Krishna tells him the truth plainly. Karna is Kunti's firstborn, the eldest, the brother of the very men he is preparing to face. The breeze smells of jasmine from a nearby garden, sweet and almost mocking. Somewhere below, someone laughs at a joke you'll never hear, and the sound floats up like a careless bird. Karna doesn't sit. He doesn't collapse. He simply goes very still, as if his body is the only thing holding his world together. Krishna lets the silence stretch. He gives Karna room to breathe inside this new shape of himself, and then Krishna offers him something so immense, it feels almost unreal in the soft evening light. Not pity, not apology, a place, a crown, a home he didn't know he'd lost. Krishna offers him the chance to walk into the Pandavas camp, not as an enemy, but as their elder brother. He offers him honor without begging for it, power without having to borrow it from Duryodhana's favor, a throne that, by birth, could have been his. For a heartbeat, it seems the sky itself leans in. You can almost hear it, the palace holding its breath again, even though no one else is on this terrace. Even the pigeons on the roofline pause their fussing, heads tilted as if they understand the stakes. Karna's jaw tightens. The muscles in his neck stand out like drawn cords. He looks out over Hastinapura, over the banners and rooftops, over the dust haze hanging in the golden air. And you realize something with a strange, sinking clarity. Karna has wanted this his whole life. Not the throne, exactly, the recognition, the simple, impossible relief of being allowed to belong. Krishna has placed that belonging in his hands. Karna could take it. He could end so much, and yet you feel the other weight there, too. A different kind of belonging, the one he already has. Because while the world judged and laughed, while teachers turned him away and princes sneered, one man had stood up for him in a crowded arena. Duryodhana, the friend who gave him a kingdom when others offered him insults. The friend who looked at him and decided he was worth something. It's a twisted gift, maybe. A dangerous friendship, like fire in dry season. But it was given. And Karna has lived inside that debt for years, wearing it like a sacred thread. Krishna waits, patient as dusk. Karna finally speaks, not with dramatic flourish, not with bravado for an audience. His voice is low, controlled, edged with pain he refuses to display. He does not deny Kunti. He does not deny the truth. He does not pretend this revelation is nothing. He tells Krishna that a man cannot spit out the food that kept him alive. He tells him that whatever else Duryodhana is, he is the one who raised Karna up when the world tried to press his head into the dirt. You can feel the words like stones placed carefully on a scale. Karna is not choosing in ignorance. He is choosing with his eyes open. That's what makes it hurt. The sunset deepens and the sky turns molten, like someone poured ghee over the horizon and lit it. The terrace lamps haven't been lit yet, so everything is edged in shadow and gold. Karna's face looks carved from the same light, half bright, half dark. Krishna does not argue like a court debater. He doesn't circle Karna like a hunter. He simply places the consequences in front of him, like offerings on a leaf plate. War, brothers facing brothers, mothers counting sons like prayers, the earth taking what men throw away. Karna listens. His eyes don't flinch, but something in him does. Something deep, something almost tender, like a wound you forgot you had until someone brushed it. And then, because Karna is Karna, he asks for one mercy in the middle of all this. Not for himself, not for victory, for his mother. He tells Krishna that Kunti will not lose all her sons. 4 of the brothers, those younger than him, will be spared by his hand. Only one, will stand directly in his aim. Arjuna, you feel a chill in your arms despite the warmth of the stones, because the name lands like a drumbeat. It's the name that has haunted Karna since the day he first lifted a longbow and learned there was someone else the world already adored. The rivalry that never cooled, the arrow that always felt knocked, even in peacetime. Krishna hears him, and you can sense that Krishna too feels the weight of it, not as surprise, not as outrage, but as the heavy acceptance of a door closing with a soft, final click. The breeze shifts again. It carries the smell of the river far off, muddy and alive, a reminder that water keeps moving, whether men learn or not. Karna stands a little straighter, like he's chosen the shape of his suffering and intends to wear it with dignity. There's a brief moment, so brief you might miss it, when Karna's gaze flicks away, as if he can't bear to look straight at Krishna's calm. Then he looks back, steady, set, a man anchoring himself to a decision because if he lets himself float, he might drown. Krishna doesn't explode, doesn't curse him, doesn't call down anything blazing and final. He simply lets the silence settle like ash after a firework. For a moment, you can hear the small sounds again. A distant bell, the flutter of a flag, footsteps somewhere below, servants going about their lives because dinners still need cooking, even when the world is ending. Krishna turns to leave, and you follow, because your legs remember how. As you descend the steps, the palace feels different than it did an hour ago. Not because walls have changed, because hope has. The hallway lamps are being lit now, one by one, little flames trembling in clay cups. The smell of ghee rises, warm and familiar, a scent so domestic it almost makes you laugh, softly under your breath, because, of course, the palace chooses this moment to smell like someone's grandmother's kitchen. Outside, the courtyard is washed in late light. Krishna's chariot waits. The horses stamp and toss their heads, impatient with ceremony. Their harness bells jingle, bright and almost cheerful, like they don't know they're pulling history behind them. A guard watches with wide eyes, trying to look official and failing. After what happened in the hall, everyone's confidence has become a costume 2 sizes too big. You step closer, and the dust rises under your feet, fine as flour. Krishna climbs into the chariot with that same unhurried grace. No triumph, no defeat, just readiness. The driver gathers the reins, leather creaks. The horses lean forward, muscles shifting under glossy coats. And then the chariot moves, rolling out of the palace gates, rolling past walls that have heard too many oaths and seen too many suns raised into enemies. The sun is low now, bleeding gold across the road, softening everything, making even the harsh stones look kind. You ride with Krishna through the streets of Hastinapura as people pause to stare. Some press their palms together in reverence. Some stare as if staring could change what's coming. Some look away, as if looking is an agreement they refuse to sign. The city smells of evening meals, lentils, smoke, frying bread. It smells of cattle and river mud, of marigolds and sweat. Ordinary life, stubborn as grass between stones. At the outskirts, the fields open. The wind comes clean. Birds wheel above the trees, calling to each other as if they're discussing nothing more serious than where to sleep. And behind you, Hastinapura recedes, its towers darkening, its banners drooping in the still air. You feel the last light on your face, warm, brief, like a hand resting on your forehead, before it lifts away. Krishna looks forward toward the road back to Upaplavya, toward the waiting campfires and anxious eyes. He doesn't look back at the palace, not once. The wheels hum on the packed earth. The horses settle into their pace. And as the sun finally slips beneath the edge of the world, the sky turns deep violet, quiet, immense, indifferent. One more door has closed, not with a slam, with a choice, with a man standing on a terrace, holding a crown in one hand and a friendship in the other, and letting the crown fall away. The chariot keeps going. The night opens wide, and the road, pale in moonlight, leads straight toward the field where all of this will be decided. The road is behind you now, pale as ash under moonlight. The wheels have stopped humming in your bones, and in the quiet that follows, when the big moment has passed and the air finally loosens its grip, you can almost smell it again. Smoke from cook fires, sandalwood from lamps, dust warmed all day by the sun. So after all of that, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? They carried this part carefully. Not the clash of armies yet, not the thunder of conches. This long, strange stretch where everyone still has a choice. Because the first lesson isn't about war at all. It's about restraint. Back in Upaplavya, you watched the Pandavas do something that feels almost unbearable. They prepared to ask for what was already theirs, not with a sword raised, with words, with a request made in full view of friends and enemies. And if you've ever had to swallow your pride just to keep the peace in your own home, you know how sharp that tastes. Dharma lives in that taste. Dharma isn't only grand vows and shining ideals. It's the discipline of doing what holds the world together, even when your heart wants to throw a pot at the wall. Yudhishthira's dharma in that tent, heavy with lamp smoke and unspoken rage, was to try peace first. Not because he was weak, because he was responsible, and responsibility is heavy. It's why Bhima's fists kept clenching. It's why Draupadi's silence felt louder than a drum. Some wrongs don't fade. They sit in the chest like a hot coal. The Rishis wanted you to feel that truth without needing it explained. Peace is not the same as forgetting. Peace is work. Then the chariot rolled out, and the road itself became a teaching. The countryside didn't look like a battlefield yet. It looked like life, fields, banyan shade, women drawing water, goats that refused to move for anyone, divine or not. Krishna traveled through it all unhurried, as if calm were also a kind of armor. You could feel the heat on the packed earth, see the dust lift and settle on the spokes. That's another lesson they tucked into the journey. Urgency doesn't always look like speed. Sometimes it looks like patience that refuses to break. Diplomacy here isn't a polite delay. It's courage without an audience. It's the nerve to walk straight into the house of people who hate you and still speak gently. A warrior can be brave with a longbow in hand. It takes a different kind of strength to enter a hall full of sharpened smiles and offer compromise. And Krishna did offer it. He kept offering it again and again until the offer itself became almost embarrassing in its modesty. Not because he didn't know what was coming, because exhausting every option is part of Dharma too. When people later look back and say, there was no other way, they can say it without lying. You were there when the welcome came in silk and gold. Guest houses perfumed and gleaming, gifts piled like small mountains, and you saw Krishna refuse it all, not with a dramatic tantrum, with a simple turning away, as if comfort bought from injustice tasted sour. He went to Vidura's home instead, the humble doorstep, the plain food, the steady decency. In that small house, with its earthen floors cool underfoot and the smell of simple cooking in the air, the Rishis were showing you something quietly radical. Honor isn't always where the throne is. Sometimes it's where truth is allowed to sit down and eat. Then came the assembly hall. You can still feel it. The vastness, the polished floor, the weight of everyone watching everyone else. The old ones who knew better. The strong ones who stayed silent. The young ones intoxicated by power. And in the center, a choice that could have saved thousands of homes from morning lamps. This is where karma becomes more than a neat idea. Karma isn't just reward and punishment like coins dropped into a cosmic box. Karma is the web of consequence. One decision tugging 10 others, one refusal making the next refusal easier. In that hall, every person's karma leaned into the moment. Bhishma's vow-bound life, Drona's divided loyalties, Dhritarashtra's soft, trembling attachment, Duryodhana's pride, polished until it shone like armor, and Krishna's patience, set before them like a final offering. Even then, the court tried to throw chains. That moment is unforgettable because it's so absurd. You can see it, men stepping forward with ropes, as if ropes have ever been enough to bind the infinite. For a heartbeat, the hall went still. Oil lamps flickered, jewelry stopped clinking, even breath felt loud. And then the Vishvarupa blazed out. Not as a trick, as a revelation. The Rishis weren't giving you spectacle for spectacle's sake. They were pressing your face, gently but firmly, toward a truth. The divine doesn't need to win. The divine doesn't need to prove anything. Yet, even when that cosmic form filled the hall, stars and fire, and the terrible vastness of reality, Duryodhana still clung to his refusal. That's the tragedy they wanted you to understand. Not that humans are small, that humans are free, because Krishna could have forced peace. You felt that power in the room. You felt how thin human plans become when the universe stands up. He could have ended the conflict like a man snuffing a lamp. Instead, he stepped back into his human shape and let the consequences remain human too. That choice is one of the deepest comforts in this part of the tale, even if it hurts. The world isn't a puppet show. You are not a puppet. People are allowed to choose, even when the choice is dreadful, even when it breaks a kingdom, even when it shatters their own hearts later, when it's too late. And then, quietly, the last door. Karna on the terrace at sunset, the light turning everything copper and tender, Krishna telling him the truth of his birth, offering him everything, brothers, legitimacy, a crown that actually fit. Karna listening with a face that didn't flinch, because his whole life had trained him for hard truths. He refused, not because he didn't understand, because gratitude can be its own chain, and pride can be its own vow. Duryodhana had once given Karna what the world withheld, a place to stand. Karna chose that loyalty even when it led into ruin. In that moment, the Rishis weren't asking you to cheer or condemn. They were showing you how complicated a human heart can be, how devotion, when tied to the wrong person, can become a kind of darkness, how a single act of kindness, real or strategic, can echo for years. And there's Maya too, shimmering through all of this. Maya is the illusion that what you can grasp is all that exists. Land, titles, the shine of an umbrella held over a prince, the thrill of being obeyed. Duryodhana could not see past those surfaces. He treated the kingdom like it was the only reality, as if losing an inch would end the universe. Krishna kept trying to widen the view, not by preaching, by offering smaller and smaller demands until the refusal revealed itself. When 5 villages were too much, the truth stood naked in the hall. This was never only about land, it was about pride that couldn't bend without shattering. So what remains after the chariot rolls away and the sky turns violet? A kind of closure, strangely, because everyone did what they could while choice still existed. Yudhishthira asked with humility. Even when it stung, Krishna spoke for peace until words had no room left. Vidura held on to decency when the court tried to trade it for comfort. Even the elders, in their troubled silence, showed you something painful. Knowing what is right is not the same as doing it. And the final meaning settled softly, like dust after a long caravan. Righteousness requires patience. Peace requires courage. And freedom, real freedom, comes with consequence. Some doors close because fate slams them. This one closed because hands pushed it shut. Now the night can hold that truth for you without agitation. You can let it rest in the mind like a lamp left burning in a quiet room. Outside, the wind moves through trees that don't care who sits on which throne. Somewhere far off, an owl calls once, then goes silent again. And the road to Kurukshetra waits, still, inevitable, while the last echo of Krishna's wheels fades into the dark. The chariot returns in darkness. The camp is waiting, not with banners, not with music, just a low, watchful hush, like a forest holding its breath before a storm breaks. The first thing that reaches you is the smell. Damp earth cooling after a long day, smoke from cook fires, key lamps turned low to save oil. Somewhere, a pot still simmers because someone kept making food as if peace might arrive hungry. Krishna's wheels whisper over packed ground. No triumph in the sound, no panic either, only the steady approach of a journey completed, even if it brought back nothing anyone wanted. You're standing near the edge of the Pandava camp when the chariot slips into view, horses dark with sweat, harness straps creaking softly. Satyaki rides close, eyes scanning the shadows, as if the night itself might leap. A few guards straighten, a few men exhale like they've been holding their lungs all day. And then the waiting begins again, but tighter now, gathered around one person. Yudhishthira steps forward. He doesn't rush. He looks like a man carrying a mountain in his chest and trying not to let anyone hear it shift. His hands are calm, but his face has that pale stillness of someone who already knows. Krishna climbs down without ceremony. Dust clings to the hems of his cloth. The kind of dust that comes from roads where too many feet have marched and too many decisions have already been made. For a moment, nobody speaks. Even Bhima, who has been pacing all evening like a caged tiger that learned to wear a man's skin, goes still. Even the cook fires seem to soften, their crackle lowering as if the flames are listening. You can feel it standing there with them, the weight of 13 years stacked like stones. Exile, humiliation, promises made to keep them alive. Promises kept so precisely, it almost feels like a curse. Yudhishthira's voice finally comes, quiet and careful, the way you touch a wound to see if it still hurts. He asks the only question that matters. One small sentence with a kingdom inside it. Is there hope? Krishna doesn't answer quickly. He looks at them, at the brothers, at Draupadi standing a step back in the lamplight, at the soldiers pretending to adjust their belts so nobody sees their faces. Then he tells them, gently, that the door is shut. He says it without cruelty. He says it like a physician naming an illness that everyone has been trying to pretend isn't there. Duryodhana would not yield even a sliver, not even a handful of earth, not even enough to plant one tree and call it peace. Krishna's voice stays calm, but the camp seems to dim around it. Like the night leans closer, like the air itself understands what those words mean. There is no wailing, no shouting, just a long, sinking silence. You hear small things you didn't notice before, the soft clink of someone's armlet as they shift their weight, a horse snorting, a distant cough, a night insect calling and calling, as if repetition could change the world. Arjuna stands with his head slightly bowed, hands resting near his longbow as if it's a habit he can't stop. His eyes are open, but they look far away, as though they're already seeing a field that isn't here yet. Nakula and Sahadeva exchange a glance, the kind brothers share when words would only spill fear everywhere. And Bhima's jaw tightens so hard you can almost hear it. He doesn't roar. He doesn't need to. His anger sits there, heavy and hot, like a coal held in the palm. Draupadi remains very still. Her jewelry catches the lamplight. Gold flickers on her throat and wrists. And for a moment, it's easy to remember that she once wore royal silk in a palace that pretended it was civilized. She listens to Krishna the way a river listens to thunder. Not shocked, not surprised, only steady. As if she has been carrying this answer for years, and now it has finally arrived to match her burden. Krishna speaks again, softer now. He tells them he tried every path that could be walked with dignity. He offered peace until even peace seemed embarrassed to be refused. He tells them the elders listened and suffered, but could not change the heart that mattered. And he tells them something else too, not with big words, not with thunder. He tells them to rest, not because rest will make tomorrow kinder, because the body still needs it, even when fate doesn't. Around you, the camp begins to move in small, practical ways, the way people move when grief must share space with duty. A runner is sent for commanders. Someone calls for water. A lamp is trimmed so it won't sputter out. A clerk opens a palm leaf bundle and begins counting supplies by lamplight, eyes red, lips silently shaping numbers like prayers. The sound of whetstones starts up at the edges of camp, soft, steady, almost soothing if you don't think too hard about what's being sharpened. A few men laugh once, oddly, because someone trips over a tent rope in the dark. It's not cruel laughter. It's the little release of nerves, the body insisting it can still be human. Then the quiet returns, deeper than before. You walk a little, without meaning to, through lanes of tents where shadows lie thick. The air is cooler here and smells of sweat-dried cloth, sandalwood paste, and old smoke. From one tent comes the low murmur of a prayer. From another, the sound of a man talking in his sleep, arguing with someone who isn't there. Above, the stars are sharp. The sky looks too clean for what is coming. In the center of camp, a small fire burns low. Orange embers wink, then hide again under ash. Someone has laid fresh wood nearby, but nobody feeds it yet. Krishna sits near that fire with the Pandavas, not like a king holding court, but like a friend who has returned from a long walk with bad news and nowhere else to put it. He doesn't inflate the moment. He doesn't decorate it with speeches. He simply stays. That is its own kind of strength. Yudhishthira's shoulders sag, just a little, as if his body finally admits what his mind already knew. But he doesn't crumble. He nods once, slowly, accepting the shape of the world as it is. Arjuna looks up at the night and then down again, as if he's measuring the distance between a thought and an act. Bhima flexes his hands once, then lets them rest on his knees, forcing himself into stillness like a man restraining a storm inside his ribs. And Draupadi watches the embers. The light paints her face in warm flickers. She looks like someone listening to a song only she can hear. Somewhere beyond the camp, the river runs on in the dark. It doesn't care. It keeps its own counsel, making the same sound it made before kings were born. The night deepens. The last meal is eaten in silence by those who can swallow. The last lamps are shielded from the wind. Even the horses settle, heads lowered, tails flicking at unseen insects. And little by little, as if the camp is a single great creature, it begins to lie down, not in defeat, in readiness, because the trying is done, because the asking has been answered, because the road ahead no longer pretends to be anything else. The fire in the center shrinks until it is mostly glow, a small, steady heart of heat. Ash drifts upward and disappears into black air. And in that dim, quiet place, between one day and the next, you can almost hear it again. Not the roar of armies, not the clash of vows, just the soft echo of chariot wheels fading into the night and the breath of a world that keeps turning, even when it breaks your heart.